The message that would change the fate of the Galactic Union forever arrived during my evening meal. Typical. Catastrophic news always seems to interrupt the few moments of peace I manage to carve out of my relentlessly busy schedule. Ambassador Trex Nolvar, my communication device, chirped in that annoyingly cheerful tone I'd never bothered to change. Priority Alpha transmission from the Krylian sector. I sighed, setting down my spoon of Zarkian soup. Priority Alpha. Of course it was. Everything was Priority Alpha these days. Last week, it was a trade dispute between the Vorex and the Tellurians over mining rights to an uninhabited moon. The week before, a diplomatic incident involving a drunken Mortalian diplomat and an unfortunately placed decorative plant at a formal reception. Accept transmission, I grumbled, expecting yet another minor crisis blown wildly out of proportion. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the panic-stricken face of Sub-Commander Jex Baroon. His normally blue scales had paled to an alarming shade of gray. Ambassador. The Krylian 3rd Scout Fleet has been. Spit it out, Baroon. Some of us would like to finish our dinner before it congeals into an inedible mass. Obliterated, sir. Completely destroyed. 17 warships gone. I froze, my irritation evaporating instantly. The Krylian 3rd Scout Fleet was no small patrol unit. It was a battle-hardened armada equipped with the latest weapons technology the Union had to offer. What species? I demanded, already reaching for my formal council robes. The Krell? Have they broken the treaty again? Unknown species, sir. Previously uncontacted. They call themselves humans. Within 3 hours, the Galactic Union Council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 27 member species occupied their designated seats in the vast circular hall. The air hummed with nervous conversation, a cacophony of clicks, whistles, rumbles, and synthesized speech from translation devices. Admiral Vorn Kellex stomped into the chamber, his massive Drevexian frame causing smaller delegates to shrink back in their seats. 4 powerful arms crossed over his armor-plated chest as he took his position at the military section of the chamber. This is unprecedented, he boomed, voice echoing off the chamber's crystalline walls. No emerging species has ever dared to attack a Union fleet. Science Officer Pelazorix slithered into her seat next to mine, her serpentine body coiling expertly around the specially designed chair. Her compound eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of intense thought among the Scythians. We should not rush to judgment, she cautioned, her voice a melodious hiss. We have no confirmation that the humans struck first. The Krylians have been known to be overzealous in their diplomatic approaches. 17 ships. Kellex slammed one of his fists onto the table. 17 ships don't just disappear because of a diplomatic misunderstanding. I raised my appendages for silence, using my position as senior ambassador to quiet the growing argument. The facts, please, I said, looking around the chamber. Just the facts. Then we can decide how to proceed with these humans. Little did I know that this would be the beginning of the most disastrous miscalculation in the history of the Galactic Union. The chamber fell silent as Fleet Commander Bax Niren's recorded final transmission played on the central display. His Krylian features' sharp angles and glossy exoskeleton filled the screen. The background of his command bridge sparked with electrical fires and blaring emergency lights. Approaching uncharted system in Sector 8742C, his voice crackled through the speakers. Preliminary scans show technological development consistent with pre-FTL civilization. Initiating standard first contact protocols. I watched the faces or equivalent sensory apparatuses of my fellow council members. Some leaned forward in anticipation, others recoiled at what they knew was coming. We have detected primitive orbital defense platforms, Niren continued in that insufferably smug tone the Krylians were famous for. Quaint technology, deploying standard intimidation formation. These primitives will understand their place in the Union quickly enough. Admiral Kellex let out a derisive snort. Standard intimidation formation. Typical Krylian arrogance. The recording continued, showing the Kryan fleet entering Earth's solar system in a wedge formation, weapons systems powered up in what they considered a show of strength. 7 warships took point positions, while 10 support vessels followed in defensive formation. The primitives are hailing us on multiple frequencies. How amusing. They're using basic radio waves. Niren laughed, his mandibles clicking together. We are responding with our standard greeting, full sensor scans of their military installations, and a demonstration of our shield technology. Science officer Pella Zorix let out an exasperated hiss. They scanned their military bases? Without permission? Even the most basic diplomatic protocol forbids such actions. The recording continued, showing the humans' response. It was not what the Kryans expected. What? They've launched primitive kinetic weapons. How adorable. Niren's confidence suddenly faltered. Wait, these aren't following expected trajectories. They're changing course mid-flight. How is that possible with such primitive evasive maneuvers? The council chamber watched in stunned silence as the supposedly primitive human missiles performed impossible course corrections by easily bypassing the Kryan shield systems designed to repel energy weapons, not physical projectiles. Our shields are useless. They're targeting our propulsion systems with precision. How could they possibly know our weak points? Niren's voice rose to a panicked screech. What followed was chaos. The humans launched a coordinated attack that demonstrated a terrifying understanding of tactical warfare. They didn't target the largest ships first, as most developing species would, but instead methodically eliminated the Kryan command and communication vessels, while effectively blinding the fleet. They're inside our defense grid. They've adapted their attack pattern. This is impossible for a pre-FTL species. They fight like a massive explosion rocked Niren's ship, cutting his transmission to static for several seconds before resuming. They fight like they've been at war their entire existence. The final moments of the recording showed the bridge of Niren's flagship in flames. Burning alarms screamed in the background. The commander's exoskeleton was cracked, leaking vital fluids. This is Fleet Commander Bax Niren with a final warning to all Union ships. Do not approach Sol system. Do not engage the species known as humans. They are not primitive. They are not unprepared. They are. The transmission ended with a blinding flash. The silence that followed was profound. I looked around at my fellow council members, seeing expressions ranging from disbelief to terror. That, I said, breaking the silence, was not a civilization unprepared for galactic warfare. That was a nightmare wearing the disguise of a developing world. The great council chamber erupted into chaos the moment the transmission ended. 27 different species all shouting, chirping, bellowing, or transmitting electromagnetic pulses of alarm simultaneously creates a special kind of pandemonium that defies description. It's like being inside a supernova with a hangover. Silence. I roared through the chamber's amplification system, causing several of the more sensitive-eared delegates to wince. We are the Galactic Union Council, not a pack of startled Fimbrian marsh hoppers. We will discuss this situation with the dignity befitting our station. Admiral Kellax rose to his full impressive height, all 4 of his arms extended in a traditional Dravexian stance of war readiness. The movement caused his ceremonial armor to catch the light in a deliberate display of intimidation. The course of action is clear, he growled. These humans have declared war on the Union by destroying our ships. We must respond with overwhelming force. I propose immediate mobilization of the combined fleet to subdue their world before they develop further military capabilities. Ambassador Lena Taro of the Nylori floated gracefully from her suspension pod, her bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with colors indicating diplomatic caution. The Nylori had earned their reputation as the Union's most skilled negotiators through millennia of preventing unnecessary conflicts. Admiral Kellax, she said, her voice like flowing water. Surely you noticed that the humans responded only after the Krylians scanned their military installations without permission? By our own laws. That constitutes a violation of sovereignty. The humans were technically within their rights to defend themselves. Kelex's upper lip curled back to reveal impressive teeth. Are you suggesting we allow an emerging species to destroy 17 Union vessels without consequences? What message does that send to other developing worlds? Perhaps, Lena countered, her luminescence shifting to a calming blue. The message should be that we respect the boundaries of all intelligent species, regardless of their technological development. Before Kelex could unleash what promised to be a particularly colorful Drevexian battle oath, Intelligence Director Morvan Dax stepped forward. The diminutive Talaxian looked almost comical next to Kelex's imposing frame, but no one dared laugh. Dax's species might appear harmless with their round bodies and large eyes, but their intelligence networks were legendary. "If I may," Dax said, his voice surprisingly deep for his size, "there is critical information the Council should consider before deciding on a course of action." With a gesture of his three-fingered hand, Dax activated the central display. Images of Earth filled the chamber cities, oceans, forests, but then shifted to something unexpected: battlefields. Hundreds of them. From primitive beings wielding crude spears to mechanized warfare to their current military technology. Humans, Dax explained clinically, have spent approximately 93% of their recorded history engaged in warfare. Not against external threats, but against themselves. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. Most spacefaring species, Dax continued, achieve interstellar travel only after unifying their planet and ending internal conflicts. Humans appear to be developing despite their ongoing wars. In fact, their most significant technological advances seem to occur during periods of conflict. He displayed a timeline, highlighting the correlation between human wars and technological leaps. Perhaps most concerning, Dax added, his tone grave, is that humans appear to have developed their current level of technology without psycho-evolutionary filtering. The chamber went deadly silent. Every spacefaring species in the Union had undergone psycho-evolutionary filtering, the natural process whereby a species eliminates its violent tendencies as a prerequisite for advanced cooperation and technology. Humans, apparently, had skipped this step entirely. So I said, struggling to process this information, we're dealing with a species that has achieved near spacefaring technology while maintaining the aggressive instincts of a primitive predator. Precisely, Dax confirmed. They are an evolutionary anomaly. The vote, when it came, was closer than I expected. The final tally, 16 for military action, 11 for diplomatic engagement. The resolution passed. The humans would be given one standard cycle to surrender unconditionally to Union authority or face the full might of the combined fleet. As I drafted the ultimatum to be transmitted to Earth, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a terrible mistake. A species that had evolved through constant warfare was unlikely to respond well to threats. But orders were orders. The ultimatum would be sent. 3 standard rotations after sending our ultimatum, the Council received notification that a human representative requested audience. The news spread through the Galactic Union headquarters like a quantum pulse, sending everyone into a frenzy of preparation. Security protocols were heightened to unprecedented levels. The Drevexian Honor Guard, the most elite warriors in the Union, lined the Council chamber, weapons at ready. What a waste of resources. I mean, what did we expect? That a single human would somehow overpower our entire security system. Looking back, that's exactly what we should have expected. The doors to the chamber parted, and in walked Well, a disappointingly ordinary-looking biped. Ambassador Mira Daniels stood approximately 1.7 units tall, with dark skin, short-cropped hair, and an expression that could only be described as amused. She wore what appeared to be a formal diplomatic uniform, though it lacked the excessive ornamentation common in Union diplomatic attire. No visible weapons, no armor, no escort. Just one human, strolling into a chamber of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, as if she were entering a casual dining establishment. "Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Union," she said, her translator perfectly rendering her speech into standard Union. "I am Ambassador Mira Daniels of Earth. I come bearing our official response to your how should I put this adorably presumptuous ultimatum. Admiral Kellax bristled visibly, his armored scales rising in a threat display. You dare mock this council? Your primitive world stands on the brink of annihilation, human. Ambassador Daniels smiled, not the submissive, placating smile of a species facing extinction, but the confident smile of a predator who has just spotted particularly slow prey. Let's clear up a few misconceptions, she said, casually leaning against the speaker's podium. First, we didn't attack your ships unprovoked. Your fleet scanned our military installations without permission, which under galactic law, yes, we deciphered your legal codes from the data we pulled from your ship's computers before they exploded constitutes an act of aggression. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. They had extracted and translated our legal codes from damaged ships in the middle of combat? Second, Daniels continued, holding up 2 fingers in what I later learned was a human counting gesture. Your ultimatum demands we surrender to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. I found that particular phrasing hilarious, considering you're the ones who'd be bleeding. Unnecessarily. A lot. I watched my fellow council members' reactions with fascination. Most species would be begging for mercy when faced with the combined might of the Union. The humans were bantering? Here is Earth's formal response, Daniels said, her tone shifting to something harder, colder. She pulled out a small data chip and inserted it into the Council's communication system. The chamber's central display activated, showing a simple message in Union Standard. No. Or God. Obey. That was it. Just no. Allow me to elaborate, Daniels said, retrieving her chip. Humanity has spent thousands of years fighting itself because we lacked worthier opponents. Your ultimatum isn't a threat to us, it's an opportunity. We've dreamed of meeting alien life for centuries, hoping to find friends among the stars. Instead, we found bullies. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's teaching bullies painful lessons. She straightened her uniform and smiled again. So by all means, send your combined fleet. We'll be waiting. And unlike your Krylian scouts, you'll have the advantage of knowing exactly what you're flying into. See you soon. With that, she turned and walked out, leaving behind a council chamber so silent you could hear a whisper tick's feather molt. Did she just invite us to attack them? Ambassador Krex of the Volturians asked, his facial tentacles writhing in confusion. I believe, I said slowly, she just declared war on us. I watched from the command bridge of the observation vessel as Admiral Kellax prepared his attack force. The Dravexian was practically giddy with anticipation, pacing the deck of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, like a newly hatched Vorkarian eager for its first hunt. Honestly, the display was embarrassing. 65 Union warships against a single human colony on Mars, their 4th planet, seemed like overkill even to me, and I've witnessed my fair share of pacification operations. We'll begin with their orbital defenses, Kellax announced to the assembled commanders via holographic link. Standard formation Dravex 7. Their primitive kinetic weapons may have surprised the Krylians, but they won't penetrate our enhanced shields. Science Officer Pella Zorix, who had been assigned to the mission as an observer despite her objections to military action, slithered closer to me. The Admiral seems quite confident, she whispered, her forked tongue flickering with doubt. When isn't he? I replied, keeping my voice low. Though I must admit, the odds do seem in our favor. The Mars colony is barely established. Intelligence reports only 20,000 humans there, with minimal defensive capabilities. Pella's compound eyes blinked rapidly. And yet Ambassador Daniels seemed so certain. I had no answer for that. The fleet dropped out of FTL on the edge of the Sol system, immediately activating stealth protocols. The plan was simple: bypass Earth's defenses entirely and strike at their vulnerable colony. A demonstration of Union power that would force the humans to reconsider their foolish defiance. No defensive grid detected around Mars, reported the sensor officer, a Pluvian with 17 sensory stalks. Minimal energy signatures. They don't even know we're here. Kellax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Launch the first wave. Target their dome habitats and communication arrays. 20 attack ships surged forward, weapons primed. On the tactical display, I watched them approach the rusty red planet where tiny specks indicated human settlements. The attack ships were halfway to Mars when everything went wrong. First, proximity alarms blared across the fleet. Space itself seemed to shimmer around us as hundreds, no, thousands of previously undetected objects decloaked. Mines, screamed the sensor officer. The entire approach vector is seeded with cloaked mines. Before Kellax could issue new orders, the mines detonated. Not with conventional explosions, but with electromagnetic pulses specifically calibrated to our shield frequencies. Shields across the first wave flickered and died. Impossible. Kellax roared. How could they know our shield frequencies? The answer came a moment later as a communication channel opened across our entire fleet. A human face appeared on every screen, a grizzled male with a scarred face and cold eyes. "Welcome to Mars, Admiral Kellax," the human said, grinning. "We've been expecting you." Kellax physically recoiled. "How do you know my name? How are you broadcasting on our secure channels?" The human's grin widened. "Did you think we merely destroyed those 17 Krylian ships? No, we captured 3 of them mostly intact. Learned all about you. Your tactics, your technology, your fears." The tactical display suddenly showed multiple launches from Mars and from hidden bases on its moons, Phobos and Deimos. But the humans weren't firing conventional weapons. Instead, they launched what appeared to be communication buoys. "What are they doing?" I asked, baffled. My question was answered as the buoys activated, each broadcasting on all frequencies. What came through wasn't weapon fire, but sounds. Terrible sounds. The death cries of Dravexians, the mating calls of their natural predators from their homeworld. The surrender codes of their ancient enemies, sounds collected from the Kryan databanks and now weaponized as psychological warfare. The effect on the Dravexian crews was immediate and devastating. Their species-enhanced hearing, evolved to detect threats, became their greatest weakness. Across the fleet, Dravexian officers collapsed, clutching their auditory organs, unable to function. With the command structure in chaos, the humans launched their actual attack. Small, agile fighters swarmed from hidden hangars, targeting the now disoriented fleet with surgical precision. They didn't waste resources trying to destroy the massive Union ships. Instead, they disabled propulsion systems, weapons arrays, and communication hubs. "Fall back. Regroup at the designated coordinates," Kellax bellowed, but few ships acknowledged. The human fighters had already begun jamming our internal communications. On the tactical display, I watched in horror as our mighty attack force disintegrated into a disorganized mess of individual ships, each trying to fend for themselves against the human swarm tactics. "They knew," Pella whispered beside me. "They knew exactly who we would send, what tactics we would use, and precisely how to counter them." The battle, if such a one-sided slaughter could be called a battle, lasted less than 2 standard hours. When it was over, 38 Union ships had been destroyed or disabled. The remaining 27, including our observation vessel, limped away in full retreat. Not a single human settlement on Mars had been damaged. As we prepared for emergency FTL jump, a final message came through from the human commander. "Congratulations, Admiral Kellax. You just declared war on the galaxy's deadliest species. We look forward to your next visit." The emergency council session following our Mars debacle was, to put it mildly, tense. Catastrophic failure doesn't quite capture the magnitude of our humiliation. 65 warships against a single colony, and we'd been sent packing like scolded juveniles. Admiral Kellax was conspicuously absent, having been temporarily relieved of command pending investigation. The military representatives sat in uncharacteristic silence, their usual bluster replaced by shell-shocked expressions. Nothing in our thousands of years of Union warfare had prepared us for what happened at Mars. Science Officer Pella Zorix slithered to the center of the chamber, her scales shimmering with nervous energy. Unlike the military leaders, she seemed more fascinated than terrified. Distinguished council members, she began, I believe I have discovered why our standard military doctrine has proven ineffective against the humans. Her slender fingers activated the central display, showing anatomical scans of human bodies' images, apparently captured from the Krylian database before their ships were destroyed. Humans appear unimpressive physically, she continued. They lack natural armor, possess no claws or fangs, have relatively weak musculature compared to species like the Dravex, and have no inherent biological weapons. By all conventional metrics, they should be easy to subdue. Clearly, our conventional metrics are flawed, I interjected dryly. Perhaps skip to the part where you explain how these seemingly unimpressive beings just decimated our fleet. Pella's eyes blinked in rapid sequence, her species equivalent of a nervous chuckle. Yes, well, the answer lies in their evolutionary history. Unlike most sentient species who evolved as either prey animals developing intelligence to avoid predators, or as ambush predators using intelligence to trap prey, humans evolved as what their biologists call persistence predators. The display shifted to show primitive humans chasing quadrupedal creatures across an arid landscape. They didn't kill with superior strength or speed. They killed by simply not stopping. Ever. They would pursue prey animals until the creatures collapsed from exhaustion. This required 3 evolutionary adaptations that make humans unique among known sentient species. She raised one slender finger. First, unparalleled endurance. Humans can continue physical activity long after most species would be forced to rest. A second finger joined the first. Second, extraordinary thermal regulation. Those bizarre water leaks from their skin, they call it sweating, allow them to maintain physical activity in conditions that would cause heat death in most species. A third finger rose. Third, and perhaps most disturbing, psychological persistence. Humans evolved to simply not give up once they've identified a target. They will endure pain, deprivation, and seemingly insurmountable obstacles to achieve their goals. Murmurs of discomfort rippled through the council chamber. In primitive times, Pella continued, her voice taking on a note of horrified fascination, human hunters would sometimes track wounded prey for multiple planetary rotations without sleep, following trails invisible to our sensors, until their targets literally collapsed from exhaustion. Ambassador Taro of the Nylori raised a luminescent tentacle. Are you suggesting the humans are tracking us like animals? Worse, Pella replied. I'm suggesting they've adapted their evolutionary hunting strategies to warfare. They don't fight like soldiers. They fight like predators who have identified us as prey. She changed the display again, showing footage from the Mars battle. Notice how they didn't focus on killing our troops. They systematically disabled our ability to fight back, then herded us into retreat. A classic predator behavior, conserving energy while wearing down stronger prey. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Our military doctrine, Pella said softly, is based on shows of force, intimidation, and quick decisive victories. It has been effective against species who think like us. But humans will not be intimidated. They cannot be quickly defeated, and most importantly, they do not think like us. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. What you're describing isn't a military problem. It's an existential threat. Pella nodded slowly. Precisely, Ambassador. We've spent centuries perfecting the art of civilized warfare. Humans have spent millennia perfecting the art of hunting and killing. We're playing different games entirely. Then how, asked the Volturian representative, mandibles quivering, do we stop them? Pella's compound eyes reflected the images of human hunters on the display. I'm afraid, distinguished representatives, that we may have already lost. We've done the one thing no prey animal should ever do. Which is? I asked, though I feared I already knew the answer. We've made ourselves appear both threatening and vulnerable. For a persistence predator, that's simply irresistible. 3 standard cycles after the Mars disaster, the combined fleet of the Galactic Union gathered at the edge of the Sol system. 417 warships, the largest military force assembled in 7 centuries, prepared for what our strategic command had designated decisive engagement, a species containment operation. What a gloriously bureaucratic way of saying we're absolutely terrified and throwing everything we have at these humans before they come for us. I stood on the command deck of the diplomatic vessel Voice of Reason, ostensibly present to offer terms of surrender should the humans reconsider their defiance. In reality, I suspected my ship was included because no one wanted to be the one to tell the Council their entire military strategy was cosmically stupid. All ships report ready, Ambassador Nolvar, Captain Jarrex announced, his chitinous faceplates arranged in what his species considered a confident expression. The humans have no idea we're here. I didn't bother correcting him. If recent history was any indicator, the humans not only knew we were here, but had probably named each of our ships and composed rude limericks about their commanders. Admiral Quell Kelex's replacement, after the Mars debacle, appeared on our main view screen. Unlike her predecessor, Quell was Centauri, a species known for cold logic rather than Drevexian battle lust. The battle plan is simple, she stated, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence as she addressed the fleet. We will bypass the outer planets and strike directly at Earth with overwhelming force. Psychological assessments indicate humans will surrender when their homeworld is threatened, regardless of their success defending colonies. Beside me, Science Officer Pella made a soft hissing sound that in her species indicated profound skepticism. I shared the sentiment. Any species that evolved as persistence predators would likely become more aggressive when their primary territory was threatened, not less. The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a testament to Union military precision. Long-range sensors showed minimal activity around Earth, just routine orbital traffic and defense platforms. This is too easy, I murmured to Pella. Where are their ships? Their defenses? Perhaps, she suggested, her voice equally quiet, we should consider the possibility this is exactly what they want us to. She never finished her sentence. At that precise moment, space itself seemed to tear open around our fleet. Not the controlled dimensional rifts of FTL travel, but something far more chaotic and terrifying. Hundreds of spatial distortions appeared, disgorging human warships directly into the heart of our formation. Impossible, shouted Captain Jarrex. Our sensors detect no FTL energy signatures. But how did they? It's not FTL technology, Pella interrupted, her compound eyes wide with realization. They've weaponized spatial folding. They're not traveling through space, they're bending it. Before our command structure could respond, the humans launched their attack. Unlike our precisely coordinated formations, human ships moved in what appeared to be chaos until you realized it was a perfectly coordinated dance of destruction. They didn't target our largest ships or command vessels. Instead, they systematically isolated small groups of our fleet, cutting them off from support, then methodically dismantling their defenses. They were hunting us, breaking the herd into manageable groups, in classic predator behavior. Across all communication channels, human transmissions flooded in not just orders or tactical information, but sounds and images calculated to induce maximum psychological distress in each species. Centauri ships received visual patterns that triggered disorientation in their 4-eyed vision. Drevexian vessels were bombarded with subsonic frequencies that paralyzed their neural systems. Even the mechanical Vox units found their cybernetic interfaces hijacked by human code packages. It wasn't just warfare. It was evolutionary psychology weaponized with terrifying precision. All vessels, defensive formation. Admiral Quell ordered, but it was already too late. Our carefully planned assault had deteriorated into scattered groups of ships fighting for survival. The Voice of Reason shuddered as something attached to our hull. The external cameras showed sleek, black craft latched onto our ship like parasites. Boarding craft. Seal all internal bulkheads, Captain Jarrex screamed. Security teams to all entry points. Too late again. Alarms blared as explosive charges breached our hull in 12 different locations simultaneously. The ship's internal defense systems fired blindly, then abruptly shut down, compromised by some human technological trickery. I stood frozen as the bridge doors slid open, revealing them human soldiers in form-fitting combat armor that seemed to bend light around them. Their helmets concealed their faces behind reflective shields, making them appear more machine than biological. They moved with unnatural fluidity, not the practiced precision of Union Marines, but something more primal. Every movement economical, predatory. They didn't storm the bridge, they flowed onto it, neutralizing the security team with non-lethal weapons before anyone could react. The lead soldier approached me, towering over my Nulvarian frame. With a soft hiss, their helmet retracted, revealing a human female with skin the color of our homeworld's soil and eyes that reflected the coldness of deep space. "Ambassador Trex Nulvar," she said, her voice unnervingly calm. "I'm Commander Alexis Reeves of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is defeated. Your admiral has surrendered. This war is over." She wasn't gloating. That would have been easier to bear. No, her tone held something far worse, the casual confidence of a predator who had never doubted the outcome of the hunt. The Grand Council chamber had never looked so subdued. The ornate hall, designed to showcase the majesty and power of the Galactic Union, now served as the venue for our formal surrender. Representatives from all 27 member species sat in uncharacteristic silence, their usual pomp and circumstance replaced by the dull shock of complete military defeat. I adjusted my formal robes, now bearing the hastily added insignia of chief negotiator, and tried not to look as terrified as I felt. In just under 14 standard cycles, humans had gone from an unknown species to the most feared power in the galaxy. Our mighty combined fleet lay in ruins. 17 core worlds had human warships in orbit. 3 Union leaders had committed ritual suicide rather than face the shame of defeat. And now we waited for the humans to dictate their terms. The chamber doors slid open to admit the human delegation. Ambassador Mira Daniels led the group, flanked by military officers and scientific advisors. I recognized Commander Reeves among them, her predatory gaze sweeping the chamber with casual assessment. Representatives of the Galactic Union, Daniels began without preamble. "I present the terms of peace between Earth and your member worlds." A data package transmitted to each council member's personal device. I reviewed it quickly, expecting harsh reparations, territorial concessions, perhaps even forced technological transfers. What I found instead was surprisingly reasonable. The humans demanded recognition as a sovereign power, unrestricted travel rights through Union space, and formal apologies for the unprovoked attacks. There were no territorial claims, no crippling economic sanctions, no demands for technological or military subjugation. "These terms are unexpectedly lenient," I said, unable to hide my surprise. Daniel smiled, that same confident, slightly predatory smile I remembered from our first meeting. "Ambassador Nulvar, contrary to what you might believe, humans don't want an empire. We don't need your resources or your territory. We've spent our entire history fighting amongst ourselves precisely because we had no external challenges worthy of our attention." She gestured to the vast galactic map displayed on the council walls. "What we want is exactly what we've always wanted, to explore, to discover, to understand. The universe is vast and fascinating, and we've only just begun to experience it." "And if we had not attacked?" I asked, genuinely curious. "If we had welcomed you into the galactic community?" Commander Reeves stepped forward, her voice carrying the hard edge of someone accustomed to battle. "Then you would have gained allies, unlike any in the galaxy. Humans are predators, yes, but we're also fiercely protective of those we consider under our care." The irony, I said, more to myself than to the humans, is remarkable. Had we extended friendship, we would have gained protectors. Instead, we made ourselves prey. The peace treaty was ratified unanimously, no great surprise, given the alternative. As the formal ceremony concluded, I found myself standing alone with Ambassador Daniels. "What happens now?" I asked. Now, she replied, looking out at the stars visible through the chamber's crystal dome, we begin again. Your species will adapt. Ours will learn. The galaxy is large enough for all of us. As I watched the human delegation depart, a sobering thought crystallized in my mind, one that I would later include in my final report to the Council. In our arrogance, we awakened the most fearsome species in the galaxy and called them enemies. Now we must hope they'll accept us as friends.